There we go. Good morning. The January 19th, 2022 meeting of the Board of Estimates is now called in order. In the interest of promoting health and safety as we continue to deal with COVID-19 pandemic, the Board of Estimates continues to meet virtually. At this time, I will ask Comptroller Henry for any corrections, additions, or noted abstentions to today's agenda.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have the following changes or corrections on page 131, Department of Recreation and Parks, Second Amendment to Agreement. Under action requested by Board of Estimates, please strike the existing language and replace with the following. The board is requested to authorize and approve a second amendment to an agreement by and between the Mayor and City Council of Baltimore, Blackout Management LLC, and Baltimore Civic Fund Incorporated, wherein an additional $500,000 is added for the booking of talent for the 2022 AFRAM Festival. The term remains the same as the amendment with the termination date of September 30th, 2022. Under amount of money and source of funds, strike the existing language and replace with the following. $500,000 issued out of the Baltimore Civic Fund AFRAM account 1001-000-12220-1465500-6070004. There is also one walk-on item from the Department of Recreation and Parks. It was submitted as a governmental and charitable solicitation application. Because this is a walk-on, it will automatically be on the non-routine agenda. My office is walking this item onto the agenda because it is time critical for the Department of Recreation and Parks to begin its efforts to support the annual AFRAM Festival, which is a key cultural event in the life of our city. I will now read the board memo for the record. From Reginald R. Moore, Executive Director of the Department of Recreation and Parks, to the Honorable President and members of the Board of Estimates. The board is requested to endorse a governmental charitable solicitation application for submission to the Board of Ethics of Baltimore City to allow Ramisi Chaka, Chief of Special Events and Permits, and Nicole Green, Deputy Director of Administration, to solicit donations to support expenses related to the AFRAM Festival beginning with the year 2022. Additionally, the board is requested to reauthorize sponsorship funds to be deposited directly into the Baltimore Civic Fund to draw down as needed. Solicitations shall commence upon approval by the Board of Ethics and shall continue for a 2-year period. The amount of money and source of funds is up to $1 million to be deposited into the Baltimore Civic Fund for AFRAM account 1001-000-12220-146-500-607-004. The Department of Recreation and Parks is honored to host the AFRAM Festival in Druid Hill Park, the city's most central park. In the past, AFRAM was hosted in Druid Hill Park, and the department looks forward to hosting it in Druid Hill Park for many years to come. Plans are underway for this year's AFRAM to be held over a 3-day period from June 17th to 19th in 2022. To support the cost for services, equipment rental, talent acquisition, and other expenses related to hosting AFRAM for 2022, 2023, and 2024, the department is requesting permission to solicit sponsorship funds. The department is also requesting permission to allow sponsorship funds solicited for AFRAM to be deposited directly into the Baltimore Civic Fund for drawdown as needed. The goal is to raise up to $1 million over the 2-year period to subsidize the overall cost of hosting AFRAM. Back to Mr. President, I move this item be included on today's agenda as a non-routine item.
Second.
All in favor? It's been moved and properly second. Please say aye.
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 All opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. This item is moved. Back to you, Mr. Comptroller.
Thank you. We now move on to the next section. The board has received one protest for page 82, item number 7, Bureau of Procurement B50006282, fiber optic cable installation, maintenance, and repair services. A protest was received by Highlander Contracting Company, LLC, and a protest was also received from Blue Star Technologies, Incorporated. The following items are being deferred or withdrawn. On pages 29 to 30, item number 2, Bureau of Procurement contract number 08000, Motorola Radio Equipment Master Purchase Agreement. This item is being deferred until February 2nd. On page 56, Bureau of Procurement pay invoice of unauthorized spend to POI Installation Group LLC is being deferred until February 2nd. On page 82, Bureau of Procurement B50006282, fiber optic cable installation, maintenance, and repair services is being deferred until February 2nd. On pages 95 through 98, Department of Finance payment in lieu of taxes agreement is being withdrawn at the request of the Housing Commissioner. On pages 102 to 107, Department of Housing and Community Development Loan Fund Home and Affordable Housing Trust Fund is being withdrawn at the request of the Housing Commissioner. And on page 108, Department of Housing and Community Development transfer funds is being withdrawn at the request of the Housing Commissioner. The following items are being moved to the non-routine agenda. On pages 2 to 3, Law Department Settlement Agreement and Release. Pages 4 and 5, Law Department Settlement Agreement and Release. Page 57, Bureau of Procurement, pay invoice of unauthorized spend to Radix Metasystems Incorporated. Page 58, Bureau of Procurement, ratification to pay outstanding invoices, contract number B50004813, interior renovation, carpentry, and associated trades to CNW Construction Company. On page 59, Bureau of Procurement, pay invoice of unauthorized spend to Mission Media. Page 83, number 9, Bureau of Procurement B50006206, Procurement Assessment and Transformation. Page 99, Baltimore Police Department Grant Award. Page 101, Labor Commissioner Memorandum of Agreement. Pages 128 to 129, Department of Public Works Settlement Agreement. No items are being moved to the routine agenda. The board has received the following abstentions from the Honorable President Nick Mosby. Will be abstaining on page 100, State's Attorney's Office Memorandum of Understanding. Page 120, State's Attorney's Office Travel Request. Page 121, City Council Travel Request. The City Solicitor, James Shea, will be abstaining on page 18, item number 1, Transfer of Funds, Recreation and Parks. There are no other abstentions, no votes, and no rejection of recommended awards. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Comptroller. I now direct the board's attention to a memorandum from my office dated January the 17th, 2022. Identify matters to be considered as routine agenda items, together with any corrections and additions that have been noted by our comptroller. At this point, I'll entertain a motion to approve all items contained on the routine agenda.
So moved.
So moved.
It's been moved and properly seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 And all those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. The routine agenda is now adopted. We're going to go to our first non-routine agenda item. It can be found on page 2 and 3. Department of Law Settlement Agreement and Release. This is a settlement of the amount of $120,000 to resolve a lawsuit brought by Mr. Kyle Knox against the Baltimore Police Department and former members of the Gun Trace Task Force, alleging numerous claims of officer misconduct. On behalf of the Law Department, we have Deputy Solicitor Ingram to walk us through the settlement. Deputy Solicitor, the floor is yours.
Good morning. Good morning, Mayor Scott, President City Council Mosby, and honorable members of the board. The Law Department is requesting this honorable board to approve the settlement in the amount of $120,000 in the matter of Kyle Knox v. the Baltimore Police Department, Detective Herschel, and the Mayor and City Council. In this matter, on and about October 11, 2012, several BPD officers patrolling a known drug traffic area in the city when they observed the plaintiff, Mr. Knox, engaging in a transaction regarding controlled dangerous substances. The officer stopped and detained the plaintiff and then Officer Herschel, who is one of the members of the Gun Trace Task Force, arrived on scene and searched the area, recovering cash and drugs. Plaintiff later was charged with the transaction of controlled dangerous substances, to which he ultimately pled and served 2 years incarceration. Thereafter, as we well know, there was a GTTF investigation of the GTTF, to which they found those members of the Baltimore Police Department violated various citizens of their constitutional rights, to which the state attorney's office moved to vacate the plaintiff's charge in 2019, and all his charges was dismissed. Plaintiff later filed numerous constitutional claims, memorial claims against PPD, the city, as well as Officer Herschel, to which alleging that Officer Herschel and other members of GTTF planted the drugs on his possession. The litigation ensued, to which the parties was able to reach amicable settlement in the amount of $120,000 due to the actions and incidents regarding this matter. And so the law department is requesting that this honorable board approve the settlement in the amount of $120,000.
Thank you, Deputy Solicitor. At this point, are there any questions or concerns from members of the board? I see the hand raised of Comptroller Henry. I yield the floor to you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, Deputy Solicitor. Can you tell the board how many more GTTF lawsuits and claims are still outstanding?
I believe we have about 5 active, and but I will defer to my colleagues, Mr. Conroy and Mr. Curley. They want to add additional commentary regarding the matters that are pending at this time.
Morning, everybody. This is Justin Conroy, Deputy Chief, Division of Legal Affairs. We currently have 4 cases in active litigation and another 4 active claims. Cases in litigation, we are defending and are confident in our position, but of course things do change in litigation, and as the discovery process plays out, we will reevaluate as necessary. And the claims have not yet been filed, so they are in the claim investigation stage.
Okay, and is the law department anticipating that last week's Bromwich report is going to cause more claimants to come forward?
Well, I'll answer that. I don't believe we can project what a plaintiff may or may not do. As we all know, the report did highlight what we've all known and what plaintiffs may have known since the investigation ensued. We were hopeful that no more matters would be sought. However, we can't project or forecast what a plaintiff may or may not do. And there's many statutory requirements and hurdles they would need to overcome to even have a valid lawsuit. But again, it's uncertain at this moment.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. President. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Comptroller. Are there any other questions or comments from other members of the board? Hearing and seeing none, I'm going to constantly be a broken record on this particular issue. We see these settlements time and time again. You know, these officers, individuals who purport themselves to be members of law enforcement that have done these great harm to our communities, they should no longer be able to take advantage of a pension system. The citizens of Baltimore shouldn't be paying for their illegal actions associated with this. You know, I know, Comptroller, you joined me last year in pushing a bill that I consistently sponsored as a delegate down in Annapolis, and I hope the administration does the same. But for us to sit here year after year and see these settlements and it come out of the coffers of our taxpayers while folks are, whether sitting in jail or sitting at home, collecting pensions and taking advantage of pensions from the citizens of Baltimore, I just think is completely the wrong approach, and we have to develop a better way moving forward. So with that said, not just with this settlement, but with all the other settlements that we're going to see today and in the future, we have to continue to push our colleagues in Annapolis to do the right thing and ensure that we have the ability of going after folks' pension. And again, with these settlements, it's not just coming from the taxpayers who were already wrongfully done by these individuals. With that said, I'll take a motion.
So moved. Move approval.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. This item is now approved. The next item on the non-routine agenda can be found on pages 4 and 5, Department of Law, Settlement Agreement and Release. This is a settlement of the amount of $75,000 to resolve a lawsuit brought by Mr. Sean Berry against the Baltimore Police Department and former members of the Gun Trace Task Force. Again, alleging claims of officer misconduct. Again, on behalf of the Law Department, we will hear from Deputy Solicitor Ingram. He'll walk us through the finding of the facts of this particular item. Deputy Solicitor, the floor is yours.
Again, honorable members of the board, the Law Department is requesting this board to approve the settlement amount of $75,000 in the matter of Sean Berry versus the Baltimore Police Department, as well as Baltimore police officers and the Mayor City Council. Again, on about February 10, 2011, officers observed Mr. Berry engaging in controlled dangerous substances transaction with another party. The officer stopped and detained him. Subsequently, Officer Herschel arrived on the scene to search, and also the officers discovered the controlled substances as well as additional cash and firearm. Officers later went to plaintiff's home, in which his brother allowed the officers to search his dwelling, to which they found additional dangerous substances as well as other paraphernalia. The plaintiff subsequently pled to the charges, to which he served approximately 2 years in prison. Thereafter, again, there was the exposure to the criminal activities of the Gun Trace Task Force, to which the State Attorney's Office moved to vacate and dismiss the original charges against Mr. Berry. Subsequently, he filed a claim, various claims, constitutional claims, monetary claims against the city as well as the officers, allegedly that Mr. Herschel and other members of the GTTF planted these controlled substances and the firearms on his possession. Thereafter, the parties into litigation, to which they decided to amicably resolve these matters given the circumstances of this matter. And so again, the Law Department is requesting this honorable board to approve the settlement amount of $75,000. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Solicitor. At this point, are there any questions or concerns from members of the board? Again, we're talking about individuals that have placed a tremendous amount of harm in our communities. We're talking about individuals who have done actions that have taken people away from their families, away from their communities. We're talking about money that could be going to Baltimore City kids for scholarships. You know, whenever we talk about these settlements, time and time again, whether it's $75,000, whether it's $150,000, whether it's $400,000, this is literally money that we're taking from a city with a tremendous amount of issues, systemic issues, that this money could be going towards to help better opportunities and better futures for our young folks, for our communities, for our city. So I'm just going to continue to double down on the fact that every time we pass and we approve one of these settlements, that is taking money away from doing the right thing for our citizens who have already been wrongfully harmed. With that, at this point, I'll move forward for a motion.
I move approval.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. This item is approved. Next up, we're going to go to page 57, Bureau Procurement, pay invoice and unauthorized spend. The board is being asked to approve an expenditure of $45,000 for training courses that were provided without approved contract from the Baltimore Police Department. At this time, I would like to recognize Stephen Derkosh from Baltimore Police Department to walk us through this item. Mr. Derkosh, the floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone. Procurement was for training for our detectives of the anti-crime.
I'm sorry, Mr. Derkosh, could you either speak up a little louder or try to turn your microphone up?
Yeah, let me try to move my mic here for you. That better?
That's a lot better. Thank you.
Okay, my apologies. Yeah, this is training for our anti-crime section that was funded under a grant. There were a lot of wheels in motion at the time. There was a grant adjustment notice under this grant to get the training, and at high levels of the federal government under the crime gun intelligence centers, it was approved at that level, and that message was conveyed to Lieutenant Colonel Herzog, who was in charge of coordinating the training. Internally, on our memos and our buck slips, we received approval from command to get the training done as well. We conveyed that message back to Lieutenant Colonel Herzog that it was approved at that time. We, on September 22nd, entered all the information on the requisition into City Buy. We didn't see any reason there wasn't going to be any approvals. And before any of that happened, before the PO was cut on September 27th through the 30th, the training was attended. Unfortunately, there were some circumstances in City Buy where there wasn't a sole source justification submitted with the paperwork, and they came back to us and said that it was an authorized purchase because the PO had not been cut yet. I was unaware of that at the time. Unfortunately, lessons learned. I now know that the PO needs to definitely be cut before any training is attended. I also conveyed that back to my command, who is now instituting training for anybody who's going to be undergoing a procurement of services on Power DMX, so that we know that this incident never happens again. Since it's happened, I've actually stopped an additional training from going through as an unauthorized purchase as well. We're working with purchasing to make sure that this never happens again. Hopefully, this is something that we can all move on from and learn from. And again, the grant pays for all these services as well.
Thank you, Mr. Darkosh. Does that wrap up your presentation before the board?
Yes, sir. I would defer to Andy Smalling if he has anything to add.
Ms. Smelling, do you have anything to add at this point? Not sure that he is on. At this point, I'll turn it back to the board, to members of the board. Are there any questions or concerns for the police department?
Just a clarification. Thank you,
Floor is
Mr.
yours.
President.
Yep.
Mr. Durkash, I thought I was getting the edge of it, but I just want to be clear. What procedures has BPD put into place to ensure that grant funds like this aren't expended without a valid PO in the future?
Well, again, our chief of finance has instituted on Power DMX that anybody at command level going through the process of obtaining training receives the training to understand that a purchase order must be cut before any training can be attended.
Okay, so at that supervisory level, that's where.
At the supervisory level,
Okay,
absolutely, and then that'll be conveyed down through the subordinates and everybody.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. President. That was all I had.
Thank you, Mr. Comptroller. At this point, are there any additional questions or concerns from other members of the board? Hearing and seeing none, at this point, I'll entertain a motion.
Move approval.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. All those in favor of approving this item, please say aye.
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 And all those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. This item is now approved. The next item on the non-routine agenda can be found on page 58, Bureau of Procurement, ratification to pay outstanding invoices. The board is being asked to approve the expenditure of $49,767.31 to C&W Construction Company for invoices incurred under contract B50004813, the interior renovation, carpentry, and associated trades that were not received until after the contract had expired. At this time, I would like to recognize Mr. Terrell Cheatham from DGS to speak on behalf of this item and explain what happened regarding this invoice. Mr. Cheatham, the floor is yours.
Good morning. Thank you. Good morning, Council President, Mr. Mayor, and Mr. Controller, and the board. This request for ratification is to pay a vendor that provided services before the end of the contract or PO. It's literally just to pay for past invoices. At the time, the contract was active when the invoices is 5 when they were initiated, but they were submitted after the end date. The contract actually was up for renewal, but due to some compliance questions and issues, it wasn't renewed at this time. We're currently shopping for a new contract. It actually went out. I think we didn't receive a qualified candidate pool, so we are resubmitting for a new bid. But we're currently doing open markets until until the new PO is in place to avoid having this issue recur. But these tasks were related to COVID responses, also projects to support other projects that were urgent. But at this time, as I said before, we are trying to curb this by doing open market requests and also putting a new contract in place. But this is literally just to ratify to pay off, I think it's 50K or just under 50K and pass through invoices for a vendor that we did have under contract.
Thank you, Mr. Chase. If I could recall, this was that contract extension was put in front of this board, and I pushed back aggressively because the complete underperforming of MBE participation goals, and in rightful tone, the administration withdrew it. So I guess what I'm hearing is, and just so everyone can understand, that this work was done with the original contract. This work was not done after this board pushed back and ultimately that extension was withdrawn, correct?
This is correct, yes.
Are there any questions or concerns from members of the board? Hearing and seeing none at this point, I'll entertain a motion.
Move approval.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. This item is approved. Thank you for coming on, Mr. Chisa.
Thank you.
Next up on our routine agenda can be found on page 59, Bureau of Procurement, pay invoice of unauthorized spend. The board is being asked to approve the expenditure of $11,450 to Mission Media. The Health Department has secured a contract with Mission Media to build a new website, though they neglected to include hosting services. This amount will cover hosting services for fiscal year 2022. At this time, I'd like to recognize Ms. Brittany Spencer from Baltimore City Health Department to speak on behalf of this item and explain the invoice. Ms. Spencer, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Council President Mosby, and thank you, Mayor Scott, Mr. Comptroller Henry, and honorable members of the board. I just want to start. I have a kind of an entire timeline of events that occurred. So this, as you said, is a website that addresses the opioid epidemic, providing resources to our residents. This predates me. This goes back to our Commissioner Wen. So the original website was built with Mission Media. Over the years, it required a facelift, it required updates. My team, we're social work backgrounds. We do not do any type of web design. So we reached out to Mission Media in 2019, 2020, and we rebuilt the entire website. I submitted the PO, or I submitted the scopes of work, I guess the quotes, through our procurement process and for fiscal year 21, fiscal year 22. And somewhere along the way, I continuously checked in on the progress of this, and this kind of led up till December. It started in May and led to December, and somewhere along the way, the new contract in City Buy was not updated with the new scope, not including the new work, which would be ongoing support and the web hosting. So we are, we do recognize that there was errors along the way, and we do plan to work with city procurement to ensure that this does not happen again by creating a multi-year contract in the future.
Thank you, Ms. Spencer. At this point, are there any questions or concerns from members of the board? Ms. Comptroller, the floor is yours.
Actually, I just wanted to say that I had a list of questions, but Ms. Spencer answered all of them in her statement. So no, I don't have anything further, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you for informing us of that. Are there any other questions or concerns from members of the board? Hearing and seeing none at this point, I entertain a motion.
Move approval.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. This item is approved. On to our next item. Non-routine agenda can be found on page 83. Number 9, Bureau of Procurement, B50006206. Procurement Assessment and Transformation. At this time, I'd like to recognize Director of Finance, Mr. Henry Raymond, to speak on behalf of this item. Director Henry Raymond, the floor is yours.
Good morning. Thank you, President Mosby, Mayor Scott, Controller Henry, honorable members of the board. I'm Henry Raymond. I'm speaking this morning regarding the procurement and transformation contract for the city of Baltimore. This was a very good RFP process. It was successful. The scope of work was well written. There were very good proposals. There were 6 finalists. In terms of MBE, WBE participation, we were able to achieve 31% MBE, WBE participation. Total contract amount is roughly $356,000. The price was advantageous to the city as it was the lowest bid. There were no protests. So I believe this was a good RFP process, and I'll share a little bit about the particular vendor. The particular vendor has been engaged in over 100 public procurement transformation projects in 30 different states over the past 10 years. They have a record of being able to do strategic procurement transformation as well as procurement automation. So we're looking forward to moving forward with this key initiative to improve the city's entire procurement process from what we call cradle to grave, from the beginning of the process to the end of the process, which is writing scopes of work, bidding work out. How do we evaluate projects? How do we reduce costs? How do we implement best business practices? And we're looking forward to getting this project underway. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Raymond. At this point, are there any questions or concerns from members of the board? Hearing and seeing none, I have a couple, Mr. Raymond. Just for general knowledge to the public, civic initiatives, which is the bid that is recommended today. From a technical perspective, where did they fall in line as it relates to them in comparative analysis to the other bidders?
Civic initiatives, of the 6 finalists, civic initiatives had a score of 70, which was the minimum score to demonstrate the competency to perform this engagement.
So they performed the worst from a technical grading perspective, correct?
They had the lowest score of the 6.
So they performed the worst. So, and not only performing the worst, they barely got into the 6, because if they were 0.1 less than from that technical grade, they wouldn't even have the opportunity to sit down and go through that evaluation process, correct?
Correct, but they did meet the minimum requirements.
Yeah, they were the worst out of the lowest grade out of all. I guess the next series of questioning, Mr. Henry Raymond, I guess the concern is the variation of the scores, right? So when you look at the standard deviation of the 6 bidders that made that 70 or higher, they fall well below the mean or the median associated with the other bidders, correct?
That is correct.
Right, so they're at 70, and the mean is about 76.1. The median is about 76.3. Next in line, when we talk about, because again, this is talking about procurement assessment and transformation. So to the general public, these individuals are going to come in, they're going to make recommendations about how we transform our procurement process that has historically been inept, has not created seats at the table for local minority women business enterprise in a right way, has not created the pipelines for advancement or improvement of local minority and women-owned businesses. And it's just from an operational and effective and efficient perspective, it's just a poor system for all. So at this point, we have 6 bidders that quote unquote qualify, and we are deciding to try to move forward with literally the worst one from a technical perspective. I bring that point up because not only are they the worst as it relates to scoring, when we look at it from a cost perspective, folks who scored significantly higher than them, some of which only cost in upwards of $80,000 or $140,000. So when we talk about the responsibility of the administration, when we talk about the responsibility of this process, we should be trying to develop the best in-class procurement system that we can provide to the citizens moving forward. Now, selecting the student that is finishing the worst in the class, I don't know if that gets us there, but it does provide a lot of concern to me. So from an evaluation committee perspective, I just want to be very clear. This was done, the scoring was done from a technical perspective. And then from a cost or finance perspective, the evaluation committee ultimately signed off on this. Is that accurate?
That is correct.
And who serves on the evaluation committee? Would you know who was on this evaluation committee?
Yes. I don't believe it would be appropriate to identify them in public, but the individuals are upper level management individuals from agencies that have extensive contract responsibilities.
I didn't realize that there was some anonymity type of requirements associated with members who serve on evaluation committees associated with open contracts and bids for the city of Baltimore.
There's not, but I believe that I don't believe that there's a real reason to divulge their names in public. I'd be more than happy to provide it to you offline.
Understood. Mr. Henry Raymond or Chief of Procurement, could you walk us through the process of the evaluation committee and from like start to finish when they ultimately sign off? And is there documentation associated with them signing off on this particular bid?
Yes, I'll take the lead, and Chief Brown can fill in anything that I may miss. So let's begin with the RFP. The RFP was written in a very concise and articulate manner that specified exactly what the city was looking for in terms of the transformation process. The bids were received. An evaluation committee membership was identified, made up of individuals that have contract management and contract administration experience from key agencies that utilize extensive contracts, both consulting contracts and construction contracts. Each of the members of the committee signed a non-disclosure agreement. They all received the 6 proposals. Now, there was a technical score evaluation and a separate financial scoring. The financial scoring was not opened until after the technical scoring was completed. The evaluation committee members met, reviewed the proposals, scored each proposal in accordance with the items that were outlined in the scope of work within the RFP. Within the RFP, we clearly articulated what criteria would be used for the technical evaluation and the segmented scoring for each of those segments. The technical scoring was worth 100 points, broken up over 4 or 5 categories. So the committee members met, evaluated each of the proposals. Each committee member did a ranking of each of the proposals. Then in the aggregate, the technical scoring by vendor was put together. Following that, the financial proposals were opened for a separate scoring. Then we went to the Board of Estimates for the recommendation. And now we appear before the Board of Estimates today for the award. And from my perspective, all of the proposals were good proposals. All of the proposals met the minimum requirements. And I don't characterize any of the proposals as worst score. I characterize it as all of the proposals met the minimum standards, which were clearly articulated within the RFP. So Chief Brown, did I miss anything?
No, sir, I concur with your summarization.
Thank you for that. So, Director Raymond, so there is a point in which the evaluation committee has signed off on this.
Yes, and the documentation is retained.
Could you send that to me as well, that signing off, as well as the list of the members that was on this particular
Yes, sir.
panel? Again, just for the general public's information, and I hate to play semantics, I'm just saying from a comparative perspective, there has to be someone that has performed better and someone who has performed least or worse or whatever we want to say. So they're in last place. They barely made it into the fold. And from a standard deviation, they are so far separated from most of the pack, right? Which is, it's problematic. So in a case where, let's say track, and you have 6 runners, and the 6th runner finishes not just last, but from a standard deviation perspective, significantly far behind the rest of the pack. Traditionally, that's not going to be the person that we're going to select to lead our team in the future, to be this transformative, this amazing, best in class in service for going after something that has historically been a problem here in the city of Baltimore, which is procurement. And that's why at the base of this, it just provides me a tremendous amount of pause and a tremendous amount of concern. And I think that it's also important, and I say this on a weekly basis, this is not the first time that the administration is hearing from me regarding this particular issue, specific to this contract, but also to the other contracts. So I like to provide an opportunity for the administration to understand and know what my concerns are prior to us even getting on these Board of Estimates meetings. But when we look at that, when we look at, again, selecting the person that's performing the worst, right? And then we compare it to pricing, it seems far more advantageous of us trying to set the bar as high as possible when we're talking about this particular bid. By going after a vendor that is literally just 10%, 5% more in cost, that has performed significantly better on the technical bid side, right? So I have a hard time going down this path because this is literally the poster child of why procurement is so broken. And in this procurement contract in which we're attempting to transform the procurement system, we're literally selecting the person that has performed the worst or the least. So in that, we constantly talk about, who do we select and how do we select? So we talk about responsive, responsible, as well as cost, lowest cost. I think that's what the charter kind of outlines of how we're supposed to select, our vendors. Now in this, what I will ask is there an opportunity for this vendor who has performed the worst, right, but also is the cheapest? Is there an opportunity for them to come back for this board to try to get additional funds? Because maybe there will be some changes during this process this evaluation process of 6 months. I just want to make sure we say that on the record. I believe from talking to the administration outside of this office, outside of this meeting, that the answer is no, but I want to make sure that that is the answer.
That is correct. The answer is no. There will
right.
not be a change order.
Understood. Now, the next concern is, and this is for the general public's knowledge and information as well. This is just for them to do the evaluation. The idea is at the end of this rainbow, that the track star who's performed the worst, at the end of this rainbow, we're going to have an implementation of whatever the recommendations are. And the likelihood that they have the inside track to do that, the likelihood that they will get the implementation is a possibility, correct?
That is correct.
All right. Well, I'm going to state for the record, and I'm going to be very clear and concise at the end of the 6 months, I do not want this to be an extension. So I'm just going to publicly state that. I do not want this board, I do not want the administration to come back to this board after we've decided to select the person that has done the worst job on our test, right, from a technical perspective, not just by a point or two, but significantly separated from the standard deviation of the other comparative bids that were comparable also from a cost perspective. I do not want to come back in front of this board and us just try to extend this particular contract. I think it needs to go back out for a bid when we go into implementation, because the citizens, the local businesses, the minority businesses, the women-owned businesses, our business community in general deserves a procurement system that works for everyone, that's being paid on time, that's having an efficient and effective entry point into knowing where bids are, having access to individuals. So that is what we're talking about here today. And again, I am really disappointed because we all have decided that this is a real important issue to the citizens of Baltimore, that this is core competencies to all the different administrations that kind of sit on this call. And for us to go down this path just seems like the wrong approach and leaves a very, very bad taste in my mouth. So again, I'm gonna state very clearly and very plainly, my expectation is for us not to come back and extend this contract of this vendor that barely made the pack that is supposed to transform the procurement process here in the city of Baltimore. With that said, are there any other questions or concerns from other members of the board? Hearing and seeing. Comptroller Henry, did you raise your hand? Oh, the mayor. Mayor Scott, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Simply, I just make a motion to approve.
Second.
There's a motion on the floor to move, and it's been properly seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. I'm going to be a no vote. Please note that we have 4 yes and 1 no. As it relates, this item is approved. At this point, we're going to move on to our next item on the non-routine agenda. It can be found on page 99, Baltimore Police Department Grant Award. At this time, I would like to again recognize Mr. Stephen Durkosh of the Baltimore Police Department to walk us through this item. Mr. Durkosh, the floor is yours.
Thank you and good morning again. The Baltimore Police Department recently received a federal award from the state under the Victim of Crime Act to address victims of domestic violence, homicides, sexual assault, and human trafficking throughout Baltimore City. The program, titled Sexual Assault Response Team and Human Trafficking, it's a collaborative approach by BPD, Mayor's Office of Neighborhood Safety and Engagement, the Baltimore Child Abuse Center, Baltimore City State's Attorney's Office, Mercy Hospital, Turnaround, and Araminta Freedom, which are 2 nonprofit victim services to address these crimes of domestic violence, homicides, and human trafficking. And it increases services and support for victims to address trauma and encourage healing. Nearly all the budgetary items are personnel costs related to salaries of 13 individuals who provide direct services to these victims. It was originally supposed to be reduced by 30% per the federal government, and concessions were made during the application phase. However, the state saw the value of the program and funded it at the full budgeted cost of $1.168 million, restoring $360,000 back to the city. Specifically related to BPD, it's our homicide victim advocate program, and the BPD's human trafficking case manager. These positions are invaluable to BPD, and definitely have a positive influence on our ability to provide victim services. So that's pretty much all I have. We just wanted to recognize the program and how we got our money restored back in light of some of the other aforementioned items on the agenda today.
Thank you, Mr. Dirkosh. At this point, are there any other questions or concerns from members of the board for the Baltimore Police Department? Hearing and seeing none, at this point, I'll entertain a motion.
Move approval.
Second.
It's been moved and properly seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. This item is now approved. Next item on our agenda today can be found on page 100, Labor Commissioner Memorandum of Understanding. This item is the employment agreement with the Fraternal Order of Police Lodge number 3, Units 1 and 2. At this time, I would like to recognize Mr. Eric Melicon and Mr. Andy Smullen of the Baltimore Police Department to walk us through this item.
President, with your permission, I think Commissioner Deborah Moore Carter wanted to begin as the Labor Commissioner.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chief of Staff. Madam Commish, the floor is yours.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, honorable members of the Board of Estimates. As stated, joining me, Eric Melanson, Chief of Staff for Baltimore Police Department, and Andy Smullen, Deputy Chief of Staff. We're here to provide highlights of the recently negotiated Memorandum of Understanding between the City of Baltimore, Baltimore Police Department, and the Fraternal Order of Police, Lodge number 3, Unit 1, which represents police officers, flight officers, and police agents. Unit 2, which is sergeants and lieutenants. We have negotiated a new MOU in accordance with the Municipal Labor Relations Ordinance, and the results have been reduced to writing in the form of the Memorandum of Understanding covering fiscal years 2022 through 2024. And I'll hand it off to Mr. Melanson now, who will provide the highlights. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Commissioner. Ms. Melanson, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Council President. Thank you, Commissioner. I do have a short presentation that I can share with your permission, sir.
Yes, sir.
To be able to
Please
go
share.
through these highlights.
Yep.
All right, can folks see my screen? Very good. So as the Labor Commissioner mentioned, this agreement covers fiscal year 2022 through the end of fiscal year 2024. To start with, there were some targeted incentives that we now created and enhanced within this agreement that go beyond base wages. That includes an enhanced field training officer pay, which we think is vital to helping us enhance the number of folks available to train field officers who become full officers. Having greater capacity there is important for our ability to get more officers in patrol. We have doubled the patrol incentive, again, given our challenges in staffing our patrol units. We've moved that up to $2,000 per year. We've enhanced our evening and night shift differentials to make it $1 per hour differential. That, again, is to account for the harder work that's happening in the evening and the night shifts. And we've created new educational incentives that are tiered based on the level of education that is earned by members of the department in FOPs 1 and 2. That's for an associate's, bachelor's, or master's degrees, earning $1,500, $3,000, and $4,500 respectively. That's built into their hourly rates. It's not just a bonus. It's something that's built into their earnings, and it's pensionable, and we think is an important enhancement to improve the quality of our officers and how they work and having that education. We also created an on-call pay stipend to account for folks that are called in after hours for emergencies and for special cases. That was something we were glad to negotiate into our agreement. Beyond these incentives, we also created leave and schedule adjustments. These were important with the advent of Workday. We wanted to make sure we created better alignment with our Workday system. So we've moved all members to an 8.5-hour day, regardless if they work in patrol or non-patrol. We've created the ability to develop non-patrol schedules on a similar 5-2, 5-3 variation, similar to what we've done in patrol. We do believe that these give us, as a management, greater rights in developing those schedules so that we can make sure that they're deploying members properly. And then leave issues, we cap the amount of terminal leave to 60 days prior to separation. We think that's a good measure that is fiscally responsible. And we wanted to ensure that leave was being considered in terms of hours, not days. Again, this is a workday fix. And so we were happy to have consensus from the FOP on fixing that issue. We've also implemented changes in the agreement related to discipline. These help conform our agreement to the new state law. This is a key provision that allowed us to, if not become compliant with what's going to happen July 1, get us there faster in some cases. It removes the ability for members to request expungements. That's for transparency's sake on particular records. It allows us to proceed, again, with conforming on public disclosure rules having to do with disciplinary records. That's now married up with state law. We wanted to ensure that our agreement did not conflict with the new provisions of HB 670 and SB 178. These are all provisions that related to police reform that came out of the General Assembly last year. So we were very glad to see us be able to move forward on that. It also enhances our ability to suspend members without pay. Again, that conforms with state law. We didn't want to leave provisions behind that restricted our ability to enhance and use our disciplinary measures with the appropriate authority. So in looking at our wage package, we wanted to ensure we were targeting our wages, not just in an across the board way. We didn't do it the way we've always done it. We wanted to ensure that when we looked at the issue of pay, we were looking at it specific to attrition. And then when we looked at the data for attrition, we see that it's in years 1 to 3 or 1 to 5. Having less than 5 years of service was the most common amount of time on that these voluntary separations that were occurring in the last 5 years. So 2/3 of our officers who voluntarily separated in the last 5 years did so with fewer than 5 years of service. So by targeting the wages on the front end, we felt that was a way to ensure that we were getting the most effect from any kind of wage negotiation in this package. This represents a visual representation of where the department, their overall wage structure for the 25 years on will go. The blue is in the officer corps, the green is the sergeants, and the lieutenant is in yellow. There's now multiple levels based upon educational attainment. But again, we enhanced that first few years at the officer level much greater because we understand and realize that's where the attrition is occurring. And that's voluntary attrition. So we want to make sure we're categorizing that. These are people who are leaving voluntarily. So enhancing those first few years is vital. Where we are going forward from here will allow us to be the most competitive in pay at the officer level. Certainly at the front end, we will be the highest starting wage for police officers in the state of Maryland as a result of our negotiated agreement. So very proud of that. We think that's vital to ensuring that we're opening the door for recruitment as wide as we can and to ensuring that we're incentivizing people to stay longer so that we can get them through into the latter years and not just see that attrition in the first 5 years. So, of course, we wanted to make sure we were doing this in a cost neutral and cost effective way. We've identified a number of operational fixes that we need to make ourselves internally that we've agreed to. They're outlined here. They include some redeployment. They include civilianization. But it's a commitment from the administration, our administration's part, and the commissioner's part to ensuring that we are doing absolutely everything we can to reduce costs, specifically when it comes to overtime burn, to help pay for and ensure that the wage package that's been negotiated stays within budget. And we have, been able to implement some of the non-pay related items already, such as schedule and discipline. We're here today to have this agreement be noted by the Board of Estimates. And upon that notation, we can then begin implementing the pay provisions of the agreement. And BBMR, who has been a partner with us from every step of the way in the negotiating room with us. I want to thank Bob Sinemy and his leadership in helping us stay within the budget. Everything that has been negotiated is part of and is not beyond what is budgeted for not just the current fiscal year, but for next fiscal year and the year after. And so I want to thank him for his leadership in keeping us on the path for fiscal stewardship in this, because we wanted to make sure that with the resources we have, as scarce as they are, that we were putting the money in the right places for the right reasons with the right incentive structures in place. And the commissioner was committed to doing that as part of this negotiated process. And he thanks the labor commissioner for her leadership and the budget office for all the work that they did. It was a joint effort, and we're glad to see us come to agreement today. And we're happy to answer any questions that might be presented by the board at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Mellison. At this point, are there any questions or concerns from members of the board? Ms. Comptroller, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning, Mr. Mellison. How are you?
Doing well, sir.
I just want to be clear about this. So are there already adequate funds in the FY22 budget to absorb the salary increases and targeted incentives required under the MOU?
Yes, the fiscal year 22 budget, when we looked at our approach in developing the wage package, most of the base wage increases do not begin until the coming July this year. So that's FY23. The incentives do begin effective the beginning of this calendar year, which is January. And so we're eager to get this noted so that we can, provide what we've negotiated. We do have adequate budget for that within our current fiscal year. You won't see a supplemental as a result of this agreement. And there are components of it for which the CARES Act and the other funds from the federal government will be eligible uses to help pay for some of the wage provisions. Again, I want to thank the budget department for helping us look at that innovative approach. And so we believe we are well within our budget for the current fiscal year to be able to approve this agreement. And subsequent fiscal years will include it as part of the current line of service requests for FY23 and 24 to stay within those allocations.
That was where I was going next in terms of, so will these salary increases and targeted incentives be absorbed as current level of service? Or
Yes.
are they going to require an increase in the overall budget request?
So again, we developed a program such that our operational changes can help absorb the impact. We wanted to make sure we were staying within budget. We've run our estimates, we've run our projections on that, and we feel confident that no, we won't need to go beyond the current line of service projections, which would be a normal cost of living adjustment that is included in every year's budget. We were very keen on staying within that allocation per the direction of BBMR, and we were able to achieve.
I thought I was hearing that, just wanted to make sure. Okay, all right, thank you. That's all I had, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Comptroller. At this point, are there any other questions or concerns from the board to the Baltimore Police Department? Hearing and seeing none, I entertain a motion.
Mr. President, I don't believe we need a motion on this. We're
Okay.
No.
Got it right here. Yep. So we just will note the report. Thank you, Mr. Solicitor. The next item on the non-routine agenda can be found on page 128, Department of Public Works Settlement Agreement. The board is being asked to approve a settlement with the Maryland Department of Environment in the amount of $56,250 related to an alleged violations. At this time, I'll turn the floor over to Mr. Yosef Kebede of the DPW and Mr. Janine Maxwell of the Law Department to walk us through this item. Ms. Kebede, the floor is yours.
Council President Mosby, I'll be presenting on behalf of DPW.
The Director, Solicitor Ingram, the floor is yours.
Sure. Again, Honorable Mayor Scott, President Council Mosby, and honorable members of the board, Department of Public Works is requesting a settlement in the amount of $56,250 to resolve civil penalties regarding alleged permit violations with our permit MDG 67. Specifically, the alleged violations concern a discharge from a valve at Ashburton Water Filtration Plant. In 2017, a discharge of chlorinated water from Jewel Lake finished water reservoir in July 2018, as well as a self-reported unauthorized discharge of water. These allegations stem from some contractual disputes between the city and one of its vendors, in which we're in the process of resolving. However, given our relationship with MDE and us being the owner of the water system, we were required to resolve these claims. And so, in the best interest of the city, we are seeking to resolve this matter, settlement of $56,000, $250, so that DPW can resolve its transaction disputes with its vendor. And so we request that this honorable board approve this settlement amount.
Thank you, Deputy Solicitor Ingram. At this point, are there any questions or concerns from members of the board? Hearing and seeing none, I entertain a motion.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion has been moved and properly seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. This item is approved. The final item on the non-routine agenda today is a walk-on item. It's the Department of Recreation and Parks governmental charitable solicitation application. Comptroller Henry read the board memorandum for this item at the top of today's meeting. At this time, I'll turn the floor over to Director Moore or Ms. Nicole Green from Rec and Parks to offer any additional remarks they might wish to offer at this point. The floor is yours, Recs and Parks.
Thank you, Council President Mosby, Honorable Mayor Scott, and members of the board. We're just requesting that Rec and Parks have the opportunity to solicit additional funds to help subsidize the Afron Festival. The Afron Festival is going to from a 2-day festival to a 3-day festival, and with the cost of inflation and us wanting to make this the best event possible, we're just requesting that you all allow us to go out and solicit funds from other organizations and businesses. And we're also asking that you reauthorize the ability for the funds to be directly deposited into the BCF account. Thank you.
Mr. President, you're muted.
Thank you, Mr. Comptroller. Thank you, Ms. Green. At this point, are there any additional questions or concerns from members of the board?
Just a clarification, are we being asked to approve this or are we noting this?
We're being asked to approve this.
Okay.
That's your question?
Yeah, that was my question. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Mayor, the floor is yours.
I just want to say that I'm looking forward to, as I know you, Mr. President, and Mr. Comptroller, are looking forward to going back to being a 3-day festival, and look forward to us growing the festival back to what we were to be after we're coming out of COVID.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At this point, are there any additional questions or concerns from other members of the board? Hearing and seeing none, at this point, I'll entertain a motion.
Move approval.
So moved.
It's been moved and properly seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say nay. The ayes have it. This item is now approved. That concludes the non-routine agenda for today. At this point, I'll turn the floor over to Comptroller Henry, as he had let us know at the beginning, to make a few remarks before we adjourn. Mr. Comptroller, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to speak briefly about the final Board of Estimates rules and regulations that were approved on page 89 of today's routine agenda. The new rules, which go into effect immediately, are the result of nearly a year's worth of work that included consultation with your office, the mayor's staff, and the law department, culminating in a 30-day public comment period in November and December of 2021. I just want to take this opportunity to thank everyone involved for their hard work and the collaborative effort. These rules lay out in detail how board meetings are conducted. They specify how the non-routine and the routine agendas are handled, as well as requests for deferrals and withdrawals of items. They also provide additional guidance for protests and create a new category of public comment called statements of opposition. And that will allow members of the public to express their concerns on board items on the record at meetings. I mentioned earlier the opportunity for public comment on the rules. In response to the comments we received, my office is going to implement a written operational policy requiring the comptroller to post any protest documents or statements of opposition received on any board item on our website, regardless of whether or not the person submitting the protest or the statement of opposition actually appeared in person at the board meeting to speak. We're doing this because the public and the press deserve to see what everyone who addresses the board says. And that really speaks to what these rules are all about. It's about providing clarity, transparency, and accessibility for the public. The Board of Estimates has an essential role as the only public forum where all major city spending decisions are addressed. For too long, the board's operations have been incomprehensible for people outside City Hall and even some of the people inside city government. These final BOE rules will help us all as members of the board do our job better in service to the people of Baltimore City. Thank you, Mr. President. I also need to make an announcement on Addenda for bids. As you know, we have postponed today's bid opening session until Wednesday, February 2nd, 2022 at 12 noon. Because of that postponement, Procurement issued Addenda, so bidders are aware that their submissions aren't due until next week, but in an abundance of caution and to ensure a fair and transparent process, I would like to read these Addenda for the record. The following bids will be opened on February 2nd, 2022. Bureau of Procurement B50006231, Pump Maintenance, Repair, and Installation Services. Bureau of Procurement B50006265, Structural Maintenance and Dredging Services for the Inner Harbor. Bureau of Procurement B50006304, Armed Security Guard Services. Bureau of Procurement B50006387, Lab Services, Specimen Collection, Processing and Resulting Services. Bureau of Procurement B50006409, Scrap Tire Collection, Disposal, and Recycling Services. Bureau of Procurement B50006425, Preventive Maintenance for Truck Scales. Bureau of Procurement B50006426, Supply and Delivery Traffic Signal Cables. Bureau of Procurement B50006439, Remove and Dispose of Animal Carcasses. Bureau of Procurement B50006443, Weekly Trash Removal for non-DGS sites. Department of Public Works WC1292, Small Water Main Replacements and Rehabilitation at various locations, Bel Air Road area. Department of Public Works WC1412, Urgent Need Water Infrastructure Rehabilitation and Improvements, Phase 3 FY21. Department of Public Works SC1027, Rehabilitation and Improvements to Sanitary Sewers at various locations in Baltimore City. And finally, the following bid will be opened on February 16th, 2022. Department of Public Works SC938, Headworks Facilities Improvements at the Patapsco Wastewater Treatment Plant. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Comptroller. At this point, are there any other comments, questions, or concerns from members of the board before we adjourn? Hearing and seeing none, as there's no new business before the desk, the board will recess until bid opening, which is going to be on February the 2nd. I guess, no, I tried to ad-lib that real quick based off of what you said. There is no bid opening today at 12. The Board of Estimates, again, based off of what the comptroller said about us adopting the new rules and regs, it was going to a bi-weekly meeting schedule in 2022. So we'll reconvene on Wednesday, February the 2nd at 9 a.m. That will be when the next bid opening occurs as well. Again, there's no bid opening after this meeting. Next bid opening will not occur until February the 2nd, which is our next Board of Estimates meeting. Again, that next Board of Estimates meeting is Wednesday, February 2nd at 9 a.m. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. Baltimore, we absolutely love you.